recruiting expert extraordinaire, HawgSports.com, part of the 24/7 Sports Network, and has been giving us some of his time on Tuesdays recently. Danny, appreciate you as always. How are you doing today?
Buddy, I'm doing great. I appreciate you having me back again this week. What's going on?
Absolutely. So, when I went about a week ago, I looked up on the 24/7 Sports website the Georgia roster. Because I was interested in, and I don't look at this all the time, just the star ratings on their current roster from when these players were in high school. They had 15 five-star players. 8 on offense, 7 on defense, and Arkansas had 5 five-star players all time. I don't know. It's like you'd say, well, what can Arkansas do to get to that level? They'll never be at that level of recruiting. There's only so many machines that can get to machine status. But do you ever see Arkansas as becoming a place under Sam Pittman where you might get a couple 5 stars each year, or is usually are these 5-star athletes reserved for the places that we usually expect them to be reserved for? Bama, Georgia, Clemson, stuff like that.
Yeah, no, it's a broad question, but a good one. I do think Arkansas is capable of holding at any given time, 2, 3, 5 stars. You bring up a really good point about Georgia. They've actually got 5 more 5 stars than Alabama's got right now. I mean, you think about that, that's pretty staggering because we all know Alabama's got them, each and every year. But, I mean, shoot, I'm looking at the list right now. South Carolina's got 2 5 stars. North Carolina's got 2. Washington has 2 5 stars. The list goes on and on. Sure, it's possible for Arkansas. I think you're correct in saying Arkansas is never going to be that powerhouse recruiting program that has more than a handful on any given roster. But, you can still win quite a few football games without that many of them. If you compile quite a few 4 stars and hit on several 3 stars and even 2 stars, you find a diamond in the rough here and there, it is attainable. I think people often ask me, how can we get a top 10 class consistently? Look, Arkansas has got a lot to offer, but I'm not sure that's the goal. I do think top 15 is attainable, but on a consistent basis, it's really tough because of the in-state production, right? Arkansas as a state just doesn't produce that much. You can't make excuses. You've still got to go out and try to find players, but Arkansas, the highest-rated class they've ever had, according to 24/7 Sports, was number 18 in the country. So let's start with cracking in that top 15 first.
Well, and I mean, right now, Arkansas's upcoming class is ranked 7th in the league, and that's 4 spots ahead of Mississippi. By the way, we're trying to make sure we don't refer to them as OLE Miss because they like to be called that.
Gotcha.
So just a little hint for the rest of the segment there.
Okay.
I look at the roster for Mississippi, and I see some names that I remember from reading in your columns and some of the other columns about Arkansas recruiting them too. Are these programs still in many ways going after some of the same players?
Absolutely, yeah. I actually did a segment with Mississippi guys last night, I should say, and we talked about that. Just how similar, how many mutual targets the 2 schools go after. And, I think it's pretty telling. According to the 24/7 Sports team talent composite is what they're calling it, which is basically just, they're trying to put a number to the caliber of talent that each team has. Ole Miss is number 27 in that category. Arkansas is right behind them at 28. So from a talent standpoint, very similar, and a lot of that is because they recruit not only the same guys, but the same caliber of guys, if that makes sense. And, it's quite comparable as far as I can see. And we'll see Saturday, exactly who's done what with coaching and conditioning and the off season and all that stuff, the X's and those part. But, just doing my early research on Mississippi so far this week, there is a lot of similarities between the 2 rosters.
Takes just a moment to reprogram yourself with that, the title of the school, doesn't it?
I'll get on board with it. Yeah.
Well, you at least got to stay on board with for about 10 more minutes. It is, but it's more of like we're calling them what's on their birth certificate, right? Like,
yeah.
Any other week, we'll call them what they want to be called, but still, technically, it's not like we're making fun of them or making faces and names at them. We're just calling them their actual name this week. But
I've got no problem with it. I actually ruffled some Mississippi feathers during baseball season, and I thought they were going to bring that up to me in the radio segment last night. So, Mississippi, in my opinion, they have no substance in baseball. A lot of flash, a lot of talk, and nothing to back it up. So I'm going to stick by that.
Well said, Danny.
Well, before we get back to recruiting, because I do have some things I want to ask you about that, we are taking name suggestions for an Arkansas-Mississippi rivalry name. Do you have one off the top of your head that you'd like to submit to become the unofficial official name?
Probably nothing I could say on the air. I go through Mississippi once a year on my way to vacation, and if I recorded some of the stuff I call that state and its highway systems, yeah, I'll have to get back to you next spring when I go on vacation.
That's fair. I've driven through that state up and down and left to right every which way, and I'm not going to argue anything that you just said, Danny, but you talked about how Arkansas isn't that big of a well for talent. And, when you think about the big tapped wells for talent, you think of Texas, you think of South Florida. Through your years and through your research, do you think that there's a well of talent out there that doesn't get its respect and due as being, one of the top places that produces some of the best college football players?
Yeah, two in particular. And we all talk about California, Texas, and Florida, right? And maybe these aren't huge surprises, but I've always thought Louisiana and Georgia per player, per capita, if you want to think of it that way, the caliber of players that come out of those two states, I think they're as good or better than anybody, and that includes Texas. Texas, for a long time now, guys, in the grand scheme of things, really hasn't produced all that much, or not to the extent that you might think. Now, quantity-wise, absolutely. They're going to produce 300, 350 a year. But, I mean, top-of-the-line type players, probably not near as many as you would think, whereas Louisiana and Georgia, and you can take a borderline guy that, hey, let's face it, LSU can't take them all, right? They can sign 25 a year. There's 25 other guys down there that could play anywhere in the SEC just about, outside of Alabama, LSU, Georgia, and a few others, right? But for a school like Arkansas, you can make a living on those type of kids. They've got some Georgia kids up here right now. A perfect example of this, Jaden Johnson, freshman defensive back, right? He actually moved up the depth chart a little bit this week. And, it's a crowded secondary, but that guy right there is going to be good. He's the perfect example of what I'm talking about. He's going to be a really solid player for 3 to 4 years here.
Danny, from Coach Pittman's comments yesterday, he says Jalen St. John and Tykees Crawford will be getting a look at the guard position. He said interior, and I'm assuming guard because I don't think they're going to be moving Ricky Stromberg at all. Now, they've both been playing tackle. Crawford already has experience playing Division I college football at Charlotte. I know St. John is huge. So is St. John, or so is Crawford. And I wonder, you've covered both of these guys when they were high schoolers. And I wonder what your thoughts are about, their fit at the interior of the offensive line. Do you think that there could be a replacement anytime in the next couple of weeks at those guard positions?
Yeah, I do. And I'll tell you why. I've followed Sam Pittman for long enough to know that there's somewhat of a trend. You get to games 4 and 5, I think he finds out quite a bit about his offensive line. And we've seen it in years past. We saw it with Denver Kirkland, Dan Skipper, even Tretola as a JUCO guy. He may not have been quite ready from the get-go, but you work them in there. About this time of the season, you start giving guys more of an opportunity in practice. And, I told Trey Biddy this the other day. I can only imagine what Sam Pittman was thinking against that Georgia offensive line the other day, looking out there and seeing, I recruited that guy, and that guy. Who do I have over here that looks more like those guys? And St. John and Ty Crawford, to me, they look like the most Georgia-looking guys that Arkansas has on the offensive line. Granted, they're young, they're somewhat new to the system, but in terms of size and athleticism, they're about as close as you can get to what Georgia's got right now. So as you get into the SEC meat of the schedule, it really doesn't surprise me that he might be trying to give those guys more of an opportunity.
It's such an interesting, when I listen to your answer here, like the way the offensive line has been constructed, obviously has been good enough against Texas and against Texas A&M, and the two non-conference teams that you've played, and it hasn't been a weakness. But if you want to get to elite, like there's a certain size and strength and physicality that you have to be if you're going to be an elite offensive line. And Sam Pittman knows what an elite offensive line looks like, and you kind of start there. That's what I'm gathering from this. The offensive line, the guards have been good, but Sam Pittman wants this to get to elite.
Yeah, I think he summed that up very well in his press conference yesterday, which, by the way, I know you guys saw it and listened to it, but anybody that hasn't checked out his press conference yesterday, I felt like it was the most Sam Pittman press conference ever. He was honest. He was very upfront about their problems, not even problems per se, but he said exactly what you're talking about. We're good right now, but we can be better. And I think that's a small sample size of what he's referring to there. Just because you're good and you can go and beat an what I consider overrated Texas and A&M team at the time. Of course, Texas coming on strong now, but you get my point. Just because you can do that doesn't mean you can't try to get better and maybe at some point, 2 years from now, 3, start to compete against the upper echelon, Georgia, Alabama, Florida, right? If that makes sense. So I do think this is somewhat of a starting point in terms of just trying to keep building, keep getting better, and see where it goes from there.
Not getting. We'll finish on this thought here. Not getting a ton of production from tight end right now, and you kind of thought you were recruiting at a decent level there. I mean, Hunter Henry came in as a top tight end in the country, or Hudson Henry did. But I look at the commits for the next two recruiting cycles, and they've really committed to bringing in tight ends. And I wonder, from your knowledge of what you know of the way this offense is schemed, and from the players that they're bringing in the next couple of recruiting cycles, how is the tight end? What is the importance of the tight end in the Kendall Briles offense? And they're obviously recruiting to that need.
Yeah, they're down right now. This is a program that has produced one of very few. I want to say only 2 or 3 schools have produced 2 Mackey winners. Arkansas, of course, with DJ and Hunter Henry, obviously did that. But to answer your question, I think there's a little bit of a misconception out there about Kendall Briles' offense. People think, well, he doesn't use the tight end that much. I disagree. When he had guys, at Florida State and other stops he's been on, when he had a quality tight end, he threw to him. Right now, guys, I'm just not sure he's got much of anything at tight end. No disrespect. Those guys are doing their best, but as of right now, they're not where they need to be in terms of a consistent passing game threat. So you brought up recruiting. They've got 2 for the current class, Dax Courtney and Tyrus Washington. I would say Tyrus is going to be more capable of playing early, maybe trying to help out even as a true freshman. And then you start to look at the 23 class. They've already got 2 4-star tight ends committed. So you give a lot of credit to Dowell Loggins there. But wouldn't shock me at all if this off-season coming up, maybe they hit that transfer portal because, it's a glaring issue to everybody. I said it after the A&M game. What if Arkansas had a Watermeyer like Texas A&M's got? And they didn't get it to him that day, but you get the point. If Arkansas had just one more guy at a tight end spot, I think it would make a huge difference for them.
Well, transfer portal can be the quick fix portal, but unfortunately, it's this one difference in free agency. You can't sign him in the middle of the season and get him onto the team. It doesn't work that way in college sports.
Gotta wait.
Danny, appreciate you, man. Always great talking.
Sir.
Do it again next week.
Appreciate it, Danny.
See you guys. All right.
Danny West, HawgSports.com, the 24/7 Sports Network. And halftime is brought to you by Crabtree RV Center, the dealership that's been serving you for over 70 years. Crabtree's on a 17-acre, 26,000 square foot showroom floor right there at the junction of I-40 and I-49 in Alma. It's the most convenient place in the entire state. Crabtree RV Center gives every family the best experience. They'll help you choose the right RV for your adventures. If you break down, they got the service and parts department to take care of you. Everything you need. Crabtree RV, making families' dreams come true for over 70 years and 4 generations. The entire inventory is right there at crabtreerv.com. 877-377-6963 on halftime. First hour wraps up
We're
next.
back and better than ever. All eyes are on the gridiron as teams are back for another football season. As always, BetOnline is your #1 spot for all the pro and college football action this season. With the new updated site and interface, even more odds, props, and contests, BetOnline continues to be the #1 source for everything football. Head to your website or use your mobile device to sign up today and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Don't forget to use our promo code BELIEVE to receive your bonus. That's BLEAV. From football, basketball, boxing, right to your favorite Vegas casino games. Don't wait to take advantage of these amazing offers for the 2021 season. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports. BetOnline, where the game starts.